As someone who really enjoys the pursuit of the ultimate format for all kinds of normal day-to-day workflows, working out what kind of tent to get for family campsite camping was a really interesting thing to get my head around. And actually, the outcome was kind of unusual. It's another one of these things where the unusual choice is actually seemingly the far better one. And in this video, I'm going to show the reasons why I think that. So I know they're not that unusual. There are plenty of people that use bell tents for family camping, but the thing is they really enjoy it. And there's this, if you go on the forums and the Facebook groups, they really have this sense of that they've discovered this incredible thing and they love them. So if you're new to this channel, I make videos exploring design, usability and workflow for all kinds of aspects of our lives. And one of those is obviously working with computers, which most of us do one way or another. We work with computers, and I felt that the keyboard is one of those areas that could be massively optimized. So I went down this enormous rabbit hole and ended up designing and building my own keyboard. So if you follow that journey along, you'll find yourself needing a PCB to build that keyboard with, and PCBWay are actually kindly sponsoring this video. So PCBWay will manufacture a PCB board based on the files that you upload. Now, I've done loads of videos on the process of designing these files, so it's definitely quite an approachable thing to do. You can follow those videos along, upload a file to PCBWay, and they will send you the real PCB. Super fun journey to go down, and many thanks to PCBWay for sponsoring this video. So there's plenty more on this channel to explore, so do jump in and have a look around. There's all kinds of things from car wash videos to electric car information and Tesla videos, through to designing things like everyday carry kits, all that sort of slightly geeky stuff, but actually has a real world impact on your everyday kind of workflows. So hopefully you'll have fun watching those, and subscribe for more. So let's start by looking at the time it takes to put the bell tent up. Now, this is one of these funny areas where if you look around, you kind of get the impression that the industry wants you to think that they keep coming out with new ways of making tents go up faster. And the latest one of those is this air beam idea, of course, which has been around for a few years. And, you know, on the face of it, it sounds like, oh, it must be really fast. You just pump the things up and up it goes. Of course, the reality is that no one seems to really talk about. The time it takes to put a tent up is mostly down to putting the pegs in. That's the bit that takes the time. Really annoying, and there's no real way around that. Most tents have a kind of proportional number of pegs to the size of the tent, so there's not really a solution to that. So we can kind of take the time taken to put the pegs in out of the equation. And then if we compare the different approaches to putting tents up, you know, your flexible poles, your rigid poles, your air beams, or with the bell tent, just one single central pole and the little A-frame. So the time it takes to deal with the poles to get the tent up with the bell tent is just like a minute. You know, you just walk in with the pole, push it up, and you're done. The tent is then up. You know, you're seeing the industry scrabble around trying to invent these new ideas when this 1,000-year-old method of a single pole under canvas is so fast and so simple and so easy. You know, basically the whole thing acts as a big circle. You've got your ground sheet, which is a circle zipped onto the canvas, and that kind of can just roll out across the floor. Ground sheet faces down, and the circle of canvas is contained within that shape. So the whole thing is super manageable and really easy to kind of move around. You then peg that around, and then you put the pole up into the middle. And you do the same with the A-frame, which is, you know, obviously just a couple of little clicky spring clips to put it together, and then you just push that up and sit it into its feet. And that's the structure done, and then you just put the guy ropes in basically, and the thing is secure. You know, there are no flaps, there's no fly sheets, there's no two layers to hang up inside the other one, and so the whole thing is just so simple in its approach, and it works really well. Now, speaking of pegs, I think one of the next things I'm going to try are these ones you can drill into the ground. I think if you bring a little cordless drill, that could actually drastically speed up that workflow. If you were to just basically drill the pegs in as you walk around the tent, that would be much easier than bashing them in, especially if the ground is hard. So there are optimizations to be made in that regard as well. And of course, because it's just a single skin tent, you can do this in the rain. You know, the top layer, the canvas is kind of all zipped up until the point you unzip it to go in with the pole, and you're rolling it out with the ground sheet face down. So the inside of the tent in between the ground sheet, which is zipped onto that canvas layer, is completely sealed from the elements while you're putting the tent up. So that's nice if you arrive and it is raining. So the next thing to talk about with a bell tent is the comfort of being in this, in day and night. You know, normal tents can be on a hot night very unpleasant places to be. Lack of breathability and the fact that you're in a synthetic material which, you know, is designed to be completely waterproof at the end of the day. If there's two layers as well, the air just doesn't escape. The humidity doesn't escape. You end up in a hot, damp environment. Kind of a pretty unpleasant experience. It's what puts a lot of people off camping, and it's the same kind of deal in the daytime. A modern synthetic tent in the daytime is just unbearably hot. Have very little ventilation often. You can't really spend any time in the middle of a day in a tent. So you go somewhere for a camping and you've got to spend the whole day out. There's no ability just to spend some relaxing time on the campsite, which I think is actually what can be really appealing about camping. So it's a single layer of cotton canvas, which means this is a really naturally breathable fabric that will behave differently if it's wet to when it's dry. So when it's dry and all the fibers are sort of dry and they space out, and it becomes even more breathable. In the wet, they sort of lock into each other and it becomes waterproof. You got this kind of natural fiber thing going on, you know, it reacts to the elements. And in the sun, in the day, it's almost like a sunshade, because you can unzip this bit around the base and roll it up and the whole thing just looks like it's hovering. The kids love to see it like this. But actually what it means is when you're lying down underneath, you've still got some reasonable privacy, but you get this incredible breeze flowing over you through the whole tent. And because of the shape of the tent, you know, they've got this big space above you. It's something like 3 meters tall in the middle. All the heat collects at the top, so you're never actually even in the hottest part of the tent either. So there's just all these unbelievable things that happen as a result of the natural design, the simple design of this very, very basic structure of a single pole under canvas sections. It just means that, you know, on all but the very, very hottest of days, you can kind of see the bell tent as a place to hang out in the day with the family, and that's just fantastic. It could be raining, but you can still have the A-frame doors open and you can just look out over the campsite. You're all sat in there, you could be playing a game on a table. There's so much space in there, and it's that sort of pleasant experience. It doesn't get too hot. Obviously on a really super hot sunny day with no cloud cover at all, it can still get pretty hot inside, but it's almost more of the radiation coming through. You can kind of feel it on your skin. The air temperature still remains pretty manageable compared to a lot of these synthetic modern tents. So the nice thing about a bell tent is you've got this massive circular floor, which makes for this very open feeling of spaciousness. And what lots of people do with bell tents is they roll out some really nice flooring into this space to really make this feel homely and comfortable. And obviously if you've got things like units or tables or beds, you know, people go quite a long way down the glamping road with these things. You're not pushing through the rubber ground sheet. So it's kind of protection for the ground sheet, but also adds enormously to that sense of homeliness. And we've got these Koya mats, you know, 2 half moons they're called. And so we basically got Koya matting over the whole floor. And the aesthetic and the feel of having this on the floor, it makes it feel kind of like a little mini house. It's just so radically different from just that sort of exposed ground sheet feeling you get normally. So one of the downsides of this flooring approach is the flooring itself does take up a lot of space in the car. We've solved this problem with a roof basket. If you check out the video I've done where I look at the roof basket idea versus a roof box, it's actually kind of much more effective. That's a great way of solving that problem. In our Tesla Model Y, we can fit all the stuff in with the roof basket approach, and even 5 meter radius Koya matting flooring for this bell tent goes in the middle of the car without too much drama. So with all this kind of charm and homeliness, you might think that actually these things are useless in real life storm situations or bad weather. You know, what are they really like when the weather gets bad? It turns out they're actually unbelievably good in that situation as well. There are some videos on Facebook of these things where people have just left them up or been caught out. They're not camping in them, but they've filmed them out the window or whatever, and you can see them in unbelievably bad, stormy, windy weather. They stay up, you know, they just stay up. They are unbelievably strong. It's a very simple structure that's very strong and resilient to bad weather. They're completely waterproof. You know, you don't get any dribbles, even though it's just a single skin. Obviously, I think if you push it, I've never really tried this to be honest, but if you push it, it's probably going to be slightly damp. It is just canvas at the end of the day, but it's tight enough and the fibers lock in, and there's this curing process. When you get a new one, the idea is you get it wet and you go out in the rain. The first time that happens, the fibers will kind of expand and lock into each other, and that then becomes waterproof as a result of that. And you know, I've never had any problems. We actually had some horrendous rain overnight on this trip, and it was perfectly pleasant sleeping in there. And it actually sounds quite nice too, being such a big space of fabric. It's and that much further away from you too. It's perfectly pleasant sleeping in a bell tent in the rain overnight. I think people might be put off by the fact that it is this shape, and they might think, oh, you know, it's only tall in the middle and you haven't got much space to walk around inside. Well, actually, so the reality is they're super tall in the middle. This is way more than head height, like 3 meters or something absurd. You know, and then it comes down like this, and you've got the raised vertical walls around the lower edge as well. So of course, the very low bits, you can't stand up there, but you can stand up in kind of the central 1.5 to 2 meters. And then as you go further out, you just have to sort of stoop progressively lower. It feels massive to wander around, but of course that lower height area around the outside is perfect for things like your bedding and your storage and stuff like that. So you can kind of use that space, and you've got your stand-up area in the middle that's completely clear. You're not tripping over a bed in that situation because the beds are further away. So that shape works really nicely. You can work with that to create a really nice camping experience in there. And of course, that does mean the floor space itself is really massive. We're talking in a nearly 5-meter diameter circle here. So it's a big space. Kids think it's just a ginormous play area. They love it. It's just brilliant. The kids are perfectly occupied inside the tent, which is just a rare thing, I think, with camping. So people take this kind of charm and creature comforts idea really far when they camp in bell tents. You'll see people hang up bunting and fairy lights inside and cushions and rugs, and they just make the experience feel really special. And I'm actually totally on board with that. I think it's lovely. It's a really, really pleasant experience to be inside a bell tent that's decked out like this with the fairy lights and all the rest of it. It just feels so drastically different to that kind of past experience of campsites. And I think that's really why there's this massive glamping industry. They charge a lot of money for people to come and stay in these things overnight at glamping sites. And some people even put wood-burning stoves in them. It's quite feasible to do that. You just get a special heat-proof thing that you cut a hole in the tent, so stick this in, and then you can shove the flue of your stove through that, and you've got a little wood-burning stove inside, which, if you were into camping all year round, you get a lot more money's worth out of this if you were to do that. Really, really lovely. And these stoves are not too big. You could store them in the car. They're designed for this purpose. So we haven't gone down that road yet, but something to think about for the future. Funnily enough, my wife really isn't into the idea of camping, but she absolutely loves this. It's amazing that this format has changed the perception of my wife completely, from someone who's not into camping at all to someone who's actually dead keen. It's more like it's a way of really getting the full holiday experience without actually having to rent a cottage or something like that. You're paying camping prices, but you're really pushing it towards that end of the spectrum in terms of the experience. So you might think with all of these unbelievable attributes that they're really expensive, and that would be the reason why not many people do it. But that's not true either. If you want to do this on the cheap, the idea would be to get a second-hand ex-rental one. So all the glamping sites will get rid of their stock every few years to make sure they're all sort of tip-top for the experience they offer. And that means you can pick up a sort of 2-year-old second-hand one for a few £100s from these glamping sites when they flog off the old stock. And that's what we did, actually, because we were so unsure about the format of the bell tent. It was totally new to us. Had I seen this video that I'm making now, I probably would have bought a brand new one, because if you do buy a second-hand one, you think about it, you're getting one that's been in the elements for 2 years. It's never been put down, so it's had the UV exposure and the moisture exposure over winter, over summer for 2 years straight. And comparing that to the kind of use case you'd get if you were just having it your own brand new and using it for holidays a couple of weeks of the year, is the equivalent of having one of those for about 73 years. You think it's going to wear out a lot sooner. You're going to have to sort of go down that road of replacing it. So if this video, like it definitely would have done to me, has convinced you that it's a wonderful format for family camping, I would think seriously about getting one brand new, just because it will last so much longer. And you'll always be able to sell it at the other end as well. And that would actually be a better prospect for someone looking at a second-hand one than an ex-rental, because you would have only had it out for the time you've had it camping rather than all year round. And I think it's that time exposed to the elements that will diminish the lifespan of these more than anything else. So downsides, there are a few downsides compared to modern synthetic tents, and that the main one is they're heavy. They're really quite heavy. You wouldn't want to carry it very far from the car, and if you did, a wheelbarrow would definitely be needed. And if they get wet and you have to put it away wet, then they really, really are heavy. And of course you need to dry it pretty soon, because you don't want to put a canvas tent away wet for more than a day or two. Really just get it dried as soon as you can. With a synthetic modern tent, you don't have to worry about it being put away wet nearly as much. So that's definitely really the main downside. Of course they're quite big as well, so if you've got a really small garden, drying it's not going to be very easy. But the flip side of that is, because of the kind of design, you've got the circular format with the rubber mat underneath and the canvas on top. You can just roll it out in the sun and all the canvas will dry like that. You can just unfold the sort of bunched up bits, move it around a little bit, or even just sort of fold over the edges to do the central bit if you can't roll it all out in your garden. So it's actually not that difficult to dry at home in your garden compared to maybe a bigger tent with lots of different bits, and you might think you have to put it up to get it to dry. You can just roll it out flat and you can quickly roll it back again if it rains. So a couple of slots in the sun over a few days, you'll have it dry. It's not a problem that can't really be worked around, considering all of the amazing benefits that it brings. Interestingly, they actually pack down quite small. It fits under the false floor in the Tesla Model Y and sinks into that little sunken bit in the boot. So the bottom line is, this is a weatherproof, stormproof tent that's extremely comfortable, very fast to put up, really enjoyable and beautiful to look at. And it actually isn't any more expensive than any other kind of normal big family tent either. The only downside is the weight, but if you're camping not far from your car, that's just not a problem anyway. So I just can't recommend these things enough. I think it's a really, really wonderful format if you're looking to get a tent for camping with your family. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share. That'll help others find the video, and I'll see you in the next one.